Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my guest today plays golf with Brian Lara. He was on the first USA Ultimate Frisbee team, and so was his passion for the game that he did not start his formal career until he was 28. But then, as legends are, he went on to become the managing director for JP Morgan, and HSBC led their Singapore and London offices. And now he's the chief revenue officer for Zafin, which is Canada's one of Canada's most successful SaaS companies out there. Thomas Schickler, what a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to Sales Diaries with Avani.
Bhavani, thank you very much for having me. And just one small correction. I wasn't on the first USA National Ultimate Team. I was on the first USA National Ultimate Team that did not win the gold medal. Um, a less successful moment of my ultimate frisbee career,
No,
but
I
still a
just
memorable one.
we could have eliminated that little detail, but then thank you so much. I love executives who come from a sports background. I play a bit of sports here and there, and I see that you've played the various games at different levels altogether. So a lot of respect, Tom.
Thank you.
Let me dive right in straight into this. You started your career back in the 90s. I've always been
Mhm.
curious to know how were the bosses back then? Like, did they give two hoots about your mental well being?
Well, interestingly, if I had to reflect on, I think the boss that really gave me the initial kind of path forward, if you will, was when I was at Citibank. And he was a gentleman of Italian American background, actually Sicilian, to be frank. And he had a very
Hmm.
blunt way of talking in a heavy New York influence accent. And the thing he told me, he asked me to sit down and he used to call me Tommy. He's the only person in my life who called me Tommy.
Uh,
And,
is it?
I think at one point I was like, no, actually, I go by Tom, and he still called me Tommy. But in any case, he told me, he's like, listen, you're an educated guy. There's probably only two things that I can help you with. One is I'm going to help you to understand how to drink scotch, and the other is how to
Uh-huh.
play golf. And he's like, the rest of it is up to
Wow.
you. So I'm not sure you get that level of mentorship today, but I mean, I certainly offer that, but I'm not sure that everybody gets that opportunity. But the
No,
one thing he
no.
did for me was he cleared the path. So he definitely removed any obstacle for my growth, and it's through that I landed my initial next large opportunity. So I'm always grateful to him.
That's that's pretty awesome. How did the sales reviews look back then? Like, of course, you didn't have the CRM to look at. How were the sales reviews?
When I started, I was actually in operations at Citibank. So I wouldn't have participated in something resembling a sales review until a bit later when I was in product management. But, from the time I entered product and, through the various iterations of my career, both in banking as even now, they're principally all kind of Excel oriented.
Yeah.
You know, even even if I think about the last couple of years or last 3 years, every time, we talk a lot about, hey, we're just going to run everything off Salesforce. But the
Yep.
reality is, when push comes to shove and we need to kind of organize the data in a way that makes sense, we still will come back to Excel. So I think that thread still exists to this day.
No doubt about that. So you've had an incredible ride. What's your superpower overall? Like, how were you different from your peers back then? What helped you climb on top of the pyramid overall? I mean, if you have to reflect and talk about one key skill, or a discipline or a habit, what's your thing, Tom?
You know, I would probably identify, like, I'm fortunate in that I've always been able to connect the dots between things that maybe otherwise don't necessarily highly relate or other people would see. So
Mm-hmm.
understand the relationship amongst things and put them together in a way that makes sense to other people. And that thread, that skill has carried me through. So I think I wouldn't call that a superpower, but it is just capability that I have. That, everybody needs to identify what their strengths are. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is that is non-discretionary. And I think this applies, you know, there's no substitute for effort. Like my dad used to say, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that's a non-discretionary factor. So there's no secret to my success other than put in the effort, put in the time, etc. And also know what you know and know what you don't know and be cool with the
Yeah.
latter.
I love that pragmatism in life. And the funny thing is, you only realize it much later, no matter how many books you read. Uh, Perfect. Now, this provides me a perfect segue to my next question. This is you, but when you interview people in your present role at Zafin as the Chief Revenue Officer, you talk to a ton of people, you interview a ton of people. What is that one thing or two or three things that you look for in a potential candidate? I'm asking this on behalf of everybody who applies for this dream role in your organization. And if they sit across Tom, what is the way to get to you? What makes a good candidate? What makes a good sales rep personally for you?
Okay, we're talking about sales reps. So I'll talk about like a couple of things that I would expect to see from a sales rep, and
Mm-hmm.
then come back to the non-discretionary factors. Okay. So, you know, sales is really about process. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do the right thing over and over again. And, the results are a function of the method. They're
Yeah.
not like so, and you need to do the right thing over and over again. And if you keep doing the right thing over and over again, you're going to get the results and you have to believe in that, or you better fix the method. But like, you got to be real about that. And so I'm looking for people who have a way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm less worried about, oh, they do, there's like the spin model or there are a bunch of different models. And like, I'm okay. You can, they're different process, but you have to have a process. And,
Correct.
in our particular business, our buyers buy by committee. They're not like, in a bank, one person doesn't make a decision, many people do. So you have to have a method to get there. And the method, as you go through the process, needs to evolve. And so that's the first thing you look for. The other things which you're going to look for is you can't have a misplaced ego. So I would rule out people who can't subordinate their own personal self for the good of the client and the outcome. So I'll be looking for a level of humility and also a person who is, even though salespeople tend to be strong individuals, in what we do, we sell as a team, and that team orientation has to be there because I think the most successful sellers are people who bring teams together rather than try to be a hero.
Absolutely. I could not have
So
agreed more with
humility.
what you said. Yeah, I could not have agreed more with your first point when you said that adherence to process, like follow whatever, but have a method, have a process. That is incredible. I mean, this is everything that we do at Sales Edge. It is about doing the right thing again and again and again, and you will succeed. It more than anything else, I personally feel it increases your accuracy and lessens the chances of failure. I mean, you can have a bad week, a month, a quarter, but then ultimately that pays off in the long run. So, agreed. And this is incredibly good advice. Thank you so much, Tom, for saying this. Uh, my next question to you is about, because you've spent 3 years in India,
Mhm.
um, and they say India is not for beginners. What is that advice that you would give to everyone out there, Tom, who's looking to set up shop in India? How was your experience? What did you learn about this incredibly complex geography while working here?
Well, Bhavani, one, I've been fortunate that my both professional career and even my personal interests have, even prior to coming to India, had led me to live and work and play in many different countries around the world. And I think that opened my mind to the possibilities of the ways that people live, the different cultures of the world, etc. And so, what I came to know prior to moving to India was that there is no one way. There is no
Yeah,
right way. There is the right way to go about things in the right context for the right
yeah,
reasons. And so I think, you know what, the India which I arrived at, like there was a context. It was the beginning of the global financial crisis, right? So
when
I
was
moved to
this?
India 2008 in November. So like shortly after I moved there, we had the attacks, and that was a pretty scary moment. And some of my colleagues had some scary moments there. So like, there's not one, there's no answer to India so much as there's an answer to the U.S. or China. I would
Yeah,
say though that the number of experiences that I had there and the opportunity to learn, I was fortunate. I was on the board of the National Payment Corporation of India with Narayan Murthy, who obviously is one of the paragons of the Indian uh, economy, technology, evolution, etc., and a very humble man. And I learned a lot from him. But one thing that I learned is ask questions, be open. There is no one path to success in India or anywhere else. So I don't really have a great answer for you other than be
yeah.
open. And you know
This is
this. You live in a country of many states and many cultures and languages, and each of which have really wonderful dimensions to them.
Yeah, they say the language changes in India every 100 kilometers. At least the dialect does. So I
Yeah.
cannot agree more with you, and I think that is a great advice that would go a long way to everyone out there in the West who are looking to scale up their businesses in India. Thank you so much, Tom. Uh, and staying in the course, somehow, particularly this year, I've spoken to a ton of sales leaders and CEOs, and there seems to be one common challenge area that everybody talks about, and that is new logo acquisition. Somehow people feel incredibly confident when it comes to growing and scaling up the key accounts, but new logo acquisition remains one of the top challenge areas. I have my own perspective to it, but I want to hear from you. What is the number one hurdle or the top three hurdles when it comes to a new logo acquisition for you, and how are you solving that challenge at Zafin today?
Well, I think the first part, like, what is the challenge in getting a new logo? Like, first of all, and look, we sell to banks, right? So each bank has its own culture. Like, not all
Hmm.
banks are organized in the same way. And we sell to committees, even if they're informally constructed. So the
Sure.
challenge for us, not so much is our value proposition is really clear. People love what our solution can do, and they're super excited. How they get all of their colleagues on board to do that is a separate matter, and that could take a long time. So the challenge for us from a new logo perspective is understanding that organization and its culture and progressing the internal sale of our solution via our champions, via our direct engagement in order to bring those people along. And so until we've mapped that out and understood it, we will not be able to be successful. So that's the challenge from a new logo perspective. You know, when you've already operating within a bank, moving to another line of business, at least you understand the processes, you understand the culture, you understand the sign off regime, etc. And it's relatively easier. Nothing is easy, but it's relatively easier.
No, you're right. And also there is some amount of credibility which is already established. You have your reference stories, case studies, results, a few champions already built around. So yes, I mean, just putting together that committee to evaluate your proposition is a little bit easier. I could not agree more when you said that, yes, and this is something that we have seen all across the board. When people are selling enterprise tech, they tend to, talk to one or two people, and sometimes if that's mid-level, the sales cycles go incredibly long. And 3 months into the sales cycle, selling to that one individual, and they somehow outsource their job of selling to five other execs on this one point of contact. And it's just uh, and that's where the process thing comes in for me, right? What you said about doing the right things, and one thing that I personally believe a lot, and something that from through our framework that we coach a lot of people, is how to map everybody else who's involved in the sales process. How do you do it by design and not by chance? So yes, you're right. Getting people on the table is the toughest job when it comes to new logo acquisition. I also feel that, Tom.
You hit on one thing I just want to point out because mapping is absolutely clear, but a big
Hmm.
risk for salespeople is that they tend to prefer to talk to the people that they like and or that they think like them,
Yes.
and they avoid the difficult conversations. And like, if there's one piece of advice I could give to every salesperson, suck it up,
Yeah.
have the tough
Yeah.
conversations early, because if you don't, things are going to take a lot longer. There may not be a
Yeah.
sale there. You're better off finding that out day one versus day 365.
Agreed. Agreed. Now, staying on sales, you've worked on both sides, and I have always been curious. How does sales look like from a banking point of view and from selling an enterprise tech? Tom, you've been on both the sides. You've seen banks, salespeople from bank sell. You've seen enterprise tech. What is the difference between the two, and what are some things that we tech salespeople can learn from the banking side?
First of all, the way I came to Zafin was I bought Zafin and successfully rolled it out at HSBC, and then got to know
Mm-hmm.
the CEO and leadership team of Zafin. Okay. So I both have bought it and sold it. And I bought other enterprise tech when I was at
Right.
HSBC and JP Morgan and Citi. So um, I would say that in the first instance, one of the things that technology companies do is they talk about their capability and have no idea what use the bank is going to make of it. And that really puts the onus on the bank teams to figure it out to see how to extract the value. And this is consistent. You could tell me you've coached whomever, and I could tell you that I've actually called timeout in the middle of an RFP presentation and asked the tech company that was presenting to leave the room and think
Mm-hmm.
about the fact that we are your prospective customer and we don't
Yeah.
actually care about your all the features. We care about what we're trying to achieve. And if they can't orient it, they could stop the meeting and go leave. Now I'm a direct and brutal person, and in fact, the Zafin people told me that I was their toughest customer, but that's for another day. Um, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that, as a banker and having been in a position to sell to our clients who were large institutional clients for the most part, um, I think we operated with a level of humility that, like, yes, we were
Mm-hmm.
expert in the financial products that we had, but we were always organizing our discussion around the understanding we had of our customers' process and the value we could create for them. And we weren't there to tell them what
Yeah.
we have on the shelf. We were there to fix their problems and create value for their companies. And I think as enterprise tech salespeople, we need to do the work to better understand and empathize with our customers. And I think it's a rare skill, to be honest.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much. We've already exceeded the time that we thought that
Sorry.
we would, but this has been such an incredibly enlightening conversation. Thank you so much, Tom. I look forward to. I wish you all the best, and I
Thank
hope
you.
our paths cross again. And look forward to talking to you sometime soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care,
Thank you so
Bhavani.
much for coming on the show.
Cheers. Cheers.